So you might be asking, how do you know if you're actually good at something? In today's video, I talk about with my friend about how to find what you're good at in life. Believe it or not, I've actually always struggled figuring out what I was really good at. Maybe it was being in an Asian American family or something like that. But for some reason, we're always focusing on what we suck at and what we can do more. And so it was really refreshing when I met up with my friend Bryant, who I met through an online program. And he used to have this podcast called Millennial Strengths, but this video actually never came out on his podcast. And I recorded on my end, so I thought, hey, it might be some kick-ass content for you. To be honest, I haven't watched this since 2018. I think that's when we shot this, believe it or not. So it's pretty crazy to see this as well. If you'd like for me to do an updated podcast as well about how I think you should find your strengths in this day, make sure to comment below. But I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys can see the progression of myself of where I was about 2 or 3 years ago and now. It's pretty cool releasing these old videos and just diving back into it. If you're new here to this channel, my name is Kevin. I'm actually a former pharmacist, YouTuber, and entrepreneur as well. So if you're into things like productivity, entrepreneurship, or personal development, hey, consider subscribing to this channel. Let's dive into the video. Peace.
I'm pleased to join with me here, Millennial Strengths, Kevin Yee. He's the founder of Refugee Hustle. And he has a really cool story about how he became a pharmacist and decided to switch course and become a YouTube star. So has that been much, Kevin?
I wouldn't say I left to be a YouTube star, but yeah, pretty on track. Yeah, that's
all right. You're on track. So as you know about Millennial Strengths, my mission is to make our generation, the millennial generation, the strongest generation ever. By doing so, we can create the strongest society ever. I talk a lot about talent, and think about talent as a mental muscle. And as you grow your muscles, we all have muscles, right? We all have biceps, we all have quads. But if you say you work out your quads a certain way, you work out even your hamstrings a certain way, you could become Usain Bolt because he's able to sprint in a certain way. If you focus on your talent and you exercise them, they become strengths. And so I asked Kevin, just name me a few of your top talents. And I looked at StrengthsFinder, and one of these days we'll get Kevin's top 5. And he brought up empathy. So that's one of the StrengthsFinder themes. Curiosity, or what I'll call learner, as well as giving a damn about people, or what I'll call developer, recognizing and cultivating the potential in others. So I want to ask you about your top talents, and what's the one that you feel you live with every single day, and everything that you do and permeates throughout your life, and how you are who you are?
Out of those 3 that you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
I would say empathy is the number 1 thing.
What about empathy?
Yeah, I think with empathy, it requires you to just be real with people, you know?
Yep.
And I think that's the real secret of empathy. Like, I don't know, people used to always tell me, like, Kevin, when I speak to you, I feel like you're peering through my soul. I feel like,
wow,
I can tell you stuff that I wouldn't tell anyone. And it's that openness and that realness. Like, once you start being real with people just automatically just open up. And that's what I've seen, like, time and time again, whether it was through my personal friends or whether it was through pharmacy. I mean, that's really important when your patients open up and they're real about the problems and they tell you exactly what is really going on in their life. That's something that I value so much. And it's one of the things that I think people watch my YouTube channel for and read my articles as well.
Wow. Let's talk about empathy a little bit. I want to talk about how your journey to becoming a pharmacist, and then of course your journey from being a pharmacist to going on YouTube. So here on the cards, so we have what I call the discovery cards. Okay. And these are kind of cool because they give you like very, very cool hints on like how do you define empathy? And of course, when I work with my coachees, we dive even deeper. We dive very personally here. So as Gallup would define empathy, people exceptionally talented in the empathy theme can sense other people's feelings by imagining themselves in others' lives or situations. And when you were speaking, I really thought of a couple things that really came up here. It says, I will make the visceral explicit. I love the gladness, the sadness, madness of humanity. I need freedom to laugh, cry, vent. And there's a metaphor that provides people's effect will often determine their effect. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that reveals anything about you?
Yeah, man. I think that's like pretty like out of all the, like, I've taken a lot of like psychology tests, and I don't know, even back in high school, people were like, man, I used to take out those online tests where they ask you, are you the X, Y, and Z? So this has been probably one of the most accurate things about me. Like, people always tell me, hey, Kevin, you're an empath. And I was like, hey, what's an empath? So I think all those things that you mentioned, yeah, definitely kind of like embody my personality, man.
Let's talk about pharmacy. Sounds like, as you mentioned, you have to have a high level of empathy. This treatment that you're providing them, it could be life or death.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have this talent theme as high as you may have it, perhaps you'd see it as transactional. So when you were looking at, everything you want to be when you grow up, and you said pharmacy, what led you to that decision? What led you to the decision to study and become a pharmacist?
So, no, what's really funny about that? Most people would say, oh, my Asian parents pushed me into that. To me, that wasn't the case.
Of course, yeah.
I made that decision by myself. But basically how an Asian parent would look at it. So I remember in high school, I was like 17 years old, and I was sitting in chemistry class. And then we were all asked, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'm like 17. I don't know, right? So I overheard my friend, and he's like, I want to do chemical engineering. It makes a lot of money. I was like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And then so I set on chemical engineering for a little bit, and then I remember, like, that same friend, we actually end up going to upstate New York. We end up going to this 50 Cent concert. And I remember we're staying at his cousin's place, and on right when I entered the house, it said, "Congratulations, Dr. Dong." I was like, who's Dr. Dong, man? And it turns out Dr. Dong was one of the first pharmacists I ever really met. And she's telling me about her journey as a pharmacist. I was like, oh shoot, you can get a doctorate from it? Oh shoot, you're a healthcare provider? You get 6 figures? I was like, this is a no-brainer, man. So
win-win-win.
Yeah, it's a win-win-win. And I was just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go into it. And like, I was all into pharmacy. So straight from high school, like, I did my 4 years of undergrad. I did 3 years of accelerated pharmacy school, and that's how I began my pharmacy journey, actually.
Was there anything particular about pharmacy that really, was there a calling in there, in something that you did? I mean, you spent 7 years studying for it and being focused on it. If you undergrad, of course, you did my pre-pharm, thought through it, you decided, hey, we're gonna do an extra 3 years, and then you practiced. What was your calling in there while you were a pharmacist, or while you're even thinking through it?
Yeah, as I was going through it, I think that's one of the hard things for me, right? Because I initially went in for the money and the doctorate title, but I also, throughout the journey, I realized that I really care about people. Like actually care about people. There's people that say that they care, but then there's people that actually care, and their actions reflect that. And so for me, I found out that I really have a knack for building trust really quickly with people. And I don't know, it just felt really good just being able to connect on that level, on a different level, where your patients trust you no matter what you say. They trust you more than their doctor. They trust you more than their nurse, anyone. Yeah. So it's a really cool, I would say, I don't know if it's a superpower, but that was a really cool experience to really connect to people on a deeper level.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you bring up everybody that you work with and say you have an illness that's life or death.
Yeah.
And at the end, your doctor's diagnosing you. You're the one who's providing the treatment.
Yeah. And let's be real too, like let's take all the healthcare professionals.
Yep.
Let's take pharmacists, doctors, nurses. Out of all those healthcare professionals, we are the most accessible. We're the most accessible healthcare provider for them, and we see them more often than they ever see their doctor. So that constant literally, I would see my patients like multiple times a week, whether it's through a grocery store or something like that. You just build this trust that, you know, doctors don't have. So they feel compelled to just share everything with your life, everything that's going through their life, you know.
And you brought up a point as we were discussing earlier about rewriting your story. And this is very interesting because this theme has come up even implicitly in our discussion here where you wrote your story, you rewrote your story. In fact, it brings up Hamilton in a way, you know, like, you know, who lives or dies, it tells your story. Yeah. And I think the story that we can share in our lives doesn't just have to be this linear path that says you're this and you're this profession.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. And I really, it's not even just it's not a belief system. This is backed by science. And it's really the fact that we all have talents and we can build upon them, not just to strengthen ourselves, but to strengthen others. And in your capacity, the motif here is this empathy theme is so significant. Just even how you're framing your life as a pharmacist, then you're looking at, well, can I add is there another way I can add value? And, you know, when you mentioned that, you know, how can I demonstrate that I really care about people in other ways, help them rewrite their story and look at another path. Yeah. So it sounds like your path to YouTube, but more so building a platform, Refugee Hustle, has gotten you, has rewrote your story. So tell us a little bit more about that and how it relates to empathy.
Well, you know, I think how it all started, like if I were to go back to pharmacy for a second, how it all started was actually helping patients rewrite their own stories, right? Meaning, like, you know, maybe they don't take really good care of themselves, or maybe they're a new parent. Me as a pharmacist, as a healthcare provider, I would help support them through their different areas of life. And so that was my job as a pharmacist, right? But you know, as I was practicing more and more, I just realized there's probably something bigger for me out there. You know, it's that feeling where you know that you're very different from people. And I remember starting off Refugee Hustle, I thought I was going to be like this big, like, personal development brand, and I wanted to be one of the gurus. I want to be like Tony Robbins and stuff. But I quickly found out, I guess, it took me a few years to find out I'm not like Tony. I'm not like all these personal development gurus. And I think my website, my content, even through YouTube and stuff, it was just documenting my journey, right? My journey, either shifting out from being a pharmacist to a full-blown entrepreneur, or sharing that story of like having a really crappy relationship with my father, and changing that, and having him actually believe in my dream of being an entrepreneur by the end. Because we all know that Asian parents, there's a stereotype. They don't want you to do entrepreneurship. They think you're gonna go broke. They think you're gonna freaking starve to death. And yeah, man, we always, like, the thing is that we always have a choice to rewrite our stories. And I think that story, like, visualizing your life as a story is so powerful. You know, like, I'll tell you, I'll go a little bit deeper. Like, I was actually really scared to jump into entrepreneurship, and I don't think I would have ever left if it wasn't for everything that happened earlier this year. So for those that don't know, I actually lost my job, and I also my dad was sent to a hospital. And I remember we actually had to make the decision to pull my dad off life support. And I remember this, like there's two things that my dad wanted, right? He always wanted to be a millionaire, and he always wanted to make sure that my mom was taken care of. So I remember on his deathbed, I told him, "Hey Dad, don't worry, I'll always take care of Mom, and I'll fulfill your dream of being a millionaire too." You know, I felt that strongly about it because it was, I mean, being a millionaire is cool, but it's really about giving back to the next generation, really leveling up. My family grew, like they came to this country with nothing in their pocket. They didn't even speak the language, right? But they moved us into the middle class, and I felt so empowered to just move the generations further along. So the reason why I tell that story is because I could have went through that same process and just been like, oh, my dad passed away, oh, I lost my job, and I just go back to being the same old me. But no, I chose to actively pursue my dream to be an entrepreneur, the active choice to fulfill my dad's promises. And so yeah, that's why I feel so, like when I say rewrite stories, that's what I mean.
It's so powerful, and I can relate to a parent passing away. My father passed away when I was 11, and
yeah,
I remember sitting next to him, you know, when you have that last discussion, and granted, you know, I was a lot younger, so it wasn't as, you know, it was a lot, the context is very different, but still the responsibility that you feel, especially being the male in your family. I have my mother, my younger sister, and myself. You really had to bridge that empathy with people who not only just you love and you care for, but also people who are depending on you.
Yeah.
And at that point, when I was 11 years old, and my father just asked me to promise, Ginny, just please take care of your mom and your sister. And I'm not sure if you had this experience, but I was a very astute student. I had my uniform on and everything, you know, and all of that, right?
Yeah.
Ready to go to school. And then my mom called and she said, "Bryant, you can't go to school today." And I was like, "What?" It was just it's like, "Well, your father just passed away, and you need to come to the hospital." And I just don't even remember how I even reacted, but I do remember the moment I walked into the hospital room, the room he was in, and I don't know if you had this experience, but when I felt his cold skin, I felt his cheek, and when you see about 15 people surrounding him, and it's probably maybe like half an hour to an hour after he passed away.
Yeah.
That moment lives with me till today. And it will always live with me. And I'm sure for you, that will always live with you as a sense of responsibility. Yeah. And I think the notion, because I really love the notion of rewriting your story. And I too, you know, my parents come from an immigrant background, both from the Philippines, from the early 70s, or the late 70s, early 80s. And given where I'm at now, I feel so fortunate. My mom and my father made this sacrifice, especially my mom was just like, just study. Yeah. And I think that probably was a bit of what you're talking about earlier, like a classic Asian household, just study, climb up, get this like fancy degree, and you'll be set, right? My mom never told me that. She just says, just study. And I did interpret it initially as get a degree. I went to UCLA, graduated from UCLA, had a consulting career, started at Deloitte, worked in consulting for 5 years. It's like a really solid business background. And then I have an MBA. And I too am in this journey of looking at how to be an entrepreneur and how to rewrite my story. It's the constant writing and rewriting.
Yeah.
And I do believe that what you're sharing right now, this ability to rewrite your story, that is a millennial strength. And I think we encompass strengths not just through our innate talents, as raw material, kind of, as I mentioned, mental muscles, things you already have that are innate to you, that are natural to you, that you can build upon, but also context that we have based on how we live today. And there's many culture provides context, your background, our experiences provide context, the skills we have to, like being a pharmacist. But the piece of the context that I want to really dive into, and I think this is where we relate a lot in personal development, is how we're appreciating the times we are in today and what we've built. As a generation, we've built some amazing things. Millennials created Facebook, created the social media platforms of today. You use YouTube, and it's one of your venues, your outlets. And not only is it an outlet for you to directly accomplish your mission, but it's also an outlet to accomplish what your father asked you to accomplish. What does that mean to you? As I share that with you, I share a little bit of my story. What does it mean to you to think that, wow, like, you're putting all this stuff together? And it probably seems very kind of like, okay, it's kind of straightforward. You make a video, it's good enough, put it on YouTube, you do some SEO, you get some people on it, right? Like, it's like, it can be transactional like that as well, but I think there's a much deeper piece to it. And I really do think that empathy that you brought up, that the notion of empathy is a really powerful one that really brings it full circle.
Well, you asked me for some of my thoughts, and one of the things that really stuck out to me too was, like, nothing is ever perfect. Like, I didn't wake up like doing YouTube one day and just be like,
I'm gonna be a YouTube star.
I'm a YouTube star. I'm gonna shoot a $2,000 rig. It was really a progression or growth over time. And that's the thing, right? Like, that's you. Like, let me go on a tangent here for a second.
Yep.
But so I created my brand, Refugee Hustle, right? And think about it. When refugees aren't happy with their life, what do? It all starts with a decision. They make that decision to make a change in their life. And by any means, they make that dream happen. Some of them literally came to America on rafts. My family, my grandma, she snuck here on I think on a boat. It's not even like no airplanes. It was like literally on a boat. We're not talking about like a Titanic ship or anything. It was like a little boat. She didn't speak any English. She came all the way from China. She like literally grew rice, saved up enough money, brought her and her kids to America only to work in a sweatshop. So she worked in a sweatshop, and then she eventually passed away as a multimillionaire, right? But the reason why I say that is because her journey wasn't A to B. Like, it was a lot of ups and downs. Like, to imagine coming to this country and having to work in a sweatshop just to make ends meet. Her husband passed away. My grandfather passed away when my dad was like, I think 8 years old. It's not a linear journey. And so to bring it back to like the millennial type of thing is like, we can take these same concepts of the refugee journey, right? You don't like something in your life, you don't like your 9 to 5, you can always make a change. You can always make that decision to make a change in your life. And like I said, rewrite that story.
It's these sort of stories, and it's your platform is so powerful, because I mean, you're absolutely right that not only do refugees have to hustle, and I have many friends who are not only have an immigrant background, but also a refugee background. I wouldn't say that my parents necessarily had a refugee background. Maybe you could with the Marcos regime, but I never thought of it like that, actually. But you could argue that with the Marcos dictatorship in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. But more so, and more generally speaking, the fact that you mentioned of a decision. My full belief, the most powerful thing we do are make decisions. We make 30,000 decisions every day. Most of them we think are inconsequential. the longer we spend to think about a decision, we're actually using more of our conscious brain. The bigger the decision is, the longer it lingers, the more you're investing in that decision. And you think about all the decisions we make that we dwindle on, and we're like, oh my God, oh shit, should I do this or not? And you're telling me about your grandma going on a boat. I can only imagine like that, and then working a sweatshop and ending up becoming a multi-millionaire through, I'm sure great decisions that she made throughout her life. I mean, everything is a decision. So let's get to your decision.
Sure.
You decided to become an entrepreneur, especially in a space that, at least on resume, you weren't a comms major. You weren't, sure you can communicate a bit.
Yeah.
Knew a bit of English, but you weren't like, oh, I'm a comms major, I know media, blah, 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 What happened? What was that decision that got you to become the founder of Refugee Hustle?
So it's speaking about decisions, this is a pretty funny story. I remember it all started after pharmacy school, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to look for when you graduate school, everybody's trying to look for a job. I was trying to find a job back home, couldn't find a job. And one of my friends was like, dude, why don't you just apply to California? I was like, I never really thought about moving to California, but screw it.
Where were you before?
Hail Mary and try to go there. And
Where did you live before?
Sorry?
Where did you live before?
Boston.
Okay, so you're from the East Coast.
Yeah, I'm from East Coast. Yeah.
I went from California to New York. You went to Boston, SoCal, right?
Yeah, we flip-flopped, right? So I ended up landing a pharmacist job in California, right? And I don't know. I think I've always wanted to be like a YouTube star. I used to watch things like films and all these other people, and I was like, man, I wish I could do what they did, right?
Yeah.
And it was so funny. Like when you move to a new place, one of the things is that you don't really have too many friends, right? You might know a few people here and there, but I was like I was in that exploratory phase.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up taking popping lessons from one of the guys from Poriotics. I'm not sure if you know who Poriotics is, but they were on ABDC. They're currently on World of Dance right now as well, and they're one of the champions for ABDC, America's Best Dance Crew. So I was taking popping lessons from this guy, and then so I meet him, and it turns out one of his roommates was Joe from JK Films, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's like, imagine meeting like these idols that you see like on YouTube. Like I saw him during my college career, and here I was just meeting him. We didn't really say that much the first time, but I used to see him at Barbell Brigade at this gym in Los Angeles. And I remember one day he told me I was telling him about my life. I was like, I'm not sure if pharmacy is really for me. And he was like, oh, Kevin, why don't you read 2 books? Start With Why by Simon Sinek and Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
So I read those books and I was just telling him like, dude, my mind is blown. And he was like, oh, that's cool. Like, yeah. And then I think it was like the next week after, he's like, hey, something happened in his life. And he was like, hey, do you want to be my roommate? I was like, what? Like, do you want to be my roommate?
You'd live with a guy?
Yeah. So that's crazy. So I literally like had to make this, like in my head, my cheap Asian side was coming in and was like, Kevin, you still have rent in one place. But then my like really fun explorative side was like, dude, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Just do it. So I went for the latter. I paid double rent and stuff. It didn't matter to me because I really wanted to like see what it was like on the other side. I threw a Hail Mary again, and then I lived with Joe and a bunch of the Just Kidding Films people. And actually, we started off Refugee Hustle together, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so it actually started off as a joint venture, but he got busier with Just Kidding Films, and then just he ended up leaving Refugee Hustle. But that's how the whole journey actually started. So it was initially supposed to be, like I said, a personal development type of thing, but I took a look at the analytics. All my biggest stories are my personal stories, and I just love sharing them, and people really resonate with my story for some reason.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Part of what got brought out there, I think
Yeah.
there's another again, one of these days, sooner or later, we're gonna have an afterword of this, and we're gonna take the Strengths Finder. It's
For
somewhere
sure.
there, right? You got it somewhere there, right?
Yeah, I was actually
Somewhere in one of your books.
Yeah.
You know that this is the most sold nonfiction book on Amazon.
no freaking
Strengths
way.
Finder 2.0. Yes, this is the most sold because of the code you get, and then you take it, and then you go through it, and then provides you a lot of insights. Anyways, we're gonna have a part 2 to this. I haven't done with part 1. So there's a theme in Strengths Finder called Developer, and I'll read this to you. People exceptionally talented in the developer theme recognize and cultivate the potential in others. They spot the signs of each small improvement and derive satisfaction from evidence of progress. Give you a couple things from this discovery card.
Mhm.
I love human potential and progress. I bring a commitment, time, and energy to human growth. I need someone to invest in. The metaphor they provide here is a parent's patience with a baby learning to walk. I definitely resound with this one too, because my life mission
Yeah.
is to maximize the potential of human talent.
Yeah.
I see a lot of this not only in what you do, but also how you do it. Even just like screw it, I'm going to go and I'm going to pay double rent because this guy, living with this guy, being around this guy, being around Joe is going to help me develop, and appreciating that in yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting part right here, your personal mission. And I really think that that's the key, my hypothesis when it comes to to life purpose, and we'll work on this part here, but track with me for a minute.
Sure.
We all come with uniqueness. And to me, the 3 parts of human uniqueness is their personality, how they are, the skills that you learn. So, we've learned things through college. We spend a lot of time on skills. We think through our personality a lot, and then talents, how we naturally are, how we naturally approach, and how we are. One of my coaches says, I really like this, your innate potentialities. You can unlock these things if you are intentional about it. That's the part we don't spend much time investing in, at least intentionally. We might think about it, but we're not as intentional. We do spend a lot of time thinking of the means in which we use our uniqueness, such as our profession. But I also say, for example, we use our talents in things we do for fun. Like, I recent conversation I had with some friends is like at parties. You go to a party, you're meeting folks. So like one of my top 5 is winning others over. So I can just meet anybody I want. Whether or not, anything happens after that, different story. But at least I can meet them and go up to them and not have a problem. I have a problem doing it. So we exercise our talents in everything we do, but we always just focus on the profession. I think you started to unlock the potential in using your talent in other means that seemed unconventional at the time, but then you realize, oh, there's actually a business model around this other thing that I'm interested in, which is personal development, but then became not just sharing stories, but sharing stories in a very intentional way to then run a business.
Yeah.
And I'd say that is all linked to your mission. So kind of thinking like the uniqueness is the fuel, and the means is like the car, but the mission is why you're driving the car. Like, why are you going somewhere? And then I'd say going with that mission, we have a mission because we want intrinsic satisfaction. We want fulfillment. And that's a destination, and it keeps refueling us. And that's our purpose. That's one of my, I'm still working on that model. So when it comes to purpose, when it comes to mission, I just want to give you a little context where I'm going here.
Yeah.
How would you define your mission? And how does it allow you to be satisfied in the work you do, in the life you have?
Huh. I think what's really interesting is like until I like you're asking me all these questions, and I think the thing is I'm always trying to figure it out, man. I never quite have it down, but I think this is like out of all the podcasts I've done, I've been featured on a few podcasts. I think this has been the most revealing like podcast about like my why, my purpose, and you're like really connecting my story from pharmacy, my story about my dad, my story about like sharing it to the world. Like I'm really starting to understand, like, dude, that's what I'm really good at. I help people rewrite their stories, not only like my story, but by sharing it to others, it impacts everyone. So it's really interesting. As you're saying, I forgot your initial question though.
So your personal life mission, which you help people rewrite stories, and if you can, and it's the process of it, which is why I plucked out learner. When you mentioned your curiosity, I mean, this only people exceptionally talented in the learner theme have a great desire to learn and to continuously improve. The process of learning, rather than the outcome, excites them. I am one who enjoys the experience of being a learner. I will follow things that interest me. I love to live on the frontier, the cutting edge. I bring a learning perspective. I need exposure to new information and experiences. And a metaphor is yes to learning curves, no to learning plateaus.
Lifelong learning. Yeah. I totally relate 100%. Like, I'm not sure if you can kind of see in the video, but I have tons of books.
I see some books.
$40,000 worth of courses, coaching.
We took one together.
I know, we took one together, right? So I thought
why we know each other.
Yeah. Yeah, man, learning has been such a huge thing in my life, and I think it's pretty, like, you talk to a lot of other pharmacists, actually a lot of them aren't like me, and that's how I knew I was kind of different from other people, right?
Yeah.
Like, when I show other people, they're like, dude, Kevin, you're weird. Why would you learn why do you want to learn this new stuff? But to me, it's so fascinating to really get in the mindset of these different careers and try apply it to myself, right? And I think one of the things I'm definitely learning right now is not so much from books anymore, but through action, right? So right now I have my own team and stuff, and it goes back into your developer card that you showed me, because that's the phase I'm going through right now. I'm potentiating all the growth within my team now, and it's an amazing feeling, man.
This is why I decided to be a coach, why I love it, why I've invested 5 figures out after the MBA, you know, like that's already a 6-figure investment, you know, and why the MBA? Well, I discovered coaching through the MBA. They gave me 8 hours of coaching, and most people use it for interviews. I'm like, communication is my top 5. I can interview, and I know the style of interview that I like, and it's not the rigid, like, okay, we're gonna have an interview. Yeah, it's you know, I have you even in a corporate interview. This is the type of interview, this is the type of style I have, and I knew I wanted executive coaching. I wanted coaching that really focused on how I tick. And as we put this all together, I'd love to learn, and this is my last question for today. And I think we're gonna have to have a follow-up here, because I love your story, Kevin. What does this mean to you? And we took a course called High Ticket Closing with Dan Locke, and I think I would say he's one of my coaches, even though it's more of like a group coaching type of environment. And he provided not just a course, but also a culture. What does coaching mean to you?
What does coaching mean to me? I think one of the things about coaching, like, I've had several coaches. I've had life coaches. We went through that group mentorship, Dan Locke's, and I consider him one of my main mentors. And I think the biggest breakthrough is actually taking that course. I think what coaching really means is a lot of people think like, oh, a coach just tells you what to do. You need to do X, Y, Z. But I think a good coach really kind of sees what you're already working with, and then asks you the right questions so that you come up with the solutions. And they help give that extra support when things are tough. Let's be real, like things never happen as we expect them to. You run into roadblocks, you know, like for me, I've run into a lot of roadblocks, like closing and having my closing team. So yeah, a good coach helps you through those rough times, man.
So just have one more question for you.
Sure. What's up?
Where do you go from here?
Dude, it's so crazy. It doesn't end with closing for me. It doesn't end with YouTube for me.
Yeah.
Like, I see myself, like, if I were to envision myself like 10 years down the line, I see myself creating a whole, I don't want to say empire. That sounds like very Romanesque, right? But I see I see myself like working with like-minded people, helping them grow as well, like unleash the maximum potential within themselves, and providing frameworks, like whether it's through my businesses that I create, whether it's through YouTube, really helping people be the best version of themselves. And I think through that, I actually become closer to the best version of myself too.
As Dan Locke says, we're closer than we think.
Yeah.
Little did I know we're going to end on that part. Thank you so much, Kevin. This has been a pleasure. And next time around, we'll do a part 2. And I would love to dive into it. I'd love to see what comes out of your profile.
Dude, after this podcast, like I'm so fired up. Like, I've had this book for like the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I haven't even cracked it open. So now, like after this podcast, I definitely have to do it.
You're going to crack it open. I'm going to coach you on it. Look at that. That happened to me too. Dude, I had this book maybe for like 3 years, and I opened it up after one of my faculty advisors. I told her I'm interested in coaching. I had like 4 or 5 coaches. So they gave me some coaching hours. So I just used and I realized that I could be a coach. It's like, well, let me dive into this. And she said, you should look at StrengthsFinder because, well, it's owned by Gallup. It's used by all these Fortune 500s, and over 90% of Fortune 500s use it. McKinsey uses it. Accenture uses it for talent development. It's legit. And almost 20 million people have taken it. So it's not just Myers-Briggs. Oh, by the way, as in like, I'm going to ask you just a little trivia. This is a bonus question.
Sure.
You get a top 5. What do you think the chances are of you or I having the same top 5 in the same order?
Ooh, that's a good
Just one out of what?
Let's say 1 out of 1,000.
There are 34 themes, and somebody actually did the mental math, and I was very impressed. They were able to do the factorials. It's 1 out of over 33 million.
What?
So that's why you need to be coached on this versus like a Myers-Briggs. Nothing wrong with it, but there's only 16 permutations. So you get too anchored by one or the other. You say, oh, I'm this or I'm that. There's none of that here. It's all about how they interact together. It's all about, it's not just one, like we'll see if empathy shows up. I think it will, but even if it doesn't, it comes up in a certain way. That's why the coaching matters. And that's why coaching matters. It's not, and you mentioned it, coaching isn't me telling you, it's you discovering, rediscovering, and articulating the value you provide and you discovering the approach. It's just like I say, the difference between a mentor and a coach. The mentor says, oh, there's a really beautiful lake behind those mountains. You should go there. And here's a map. The coach is sitting with you in the passenger seat and asking you, should you go this way? Should you go that way? To try to get to that lake. And once you do, it's like, okay, well, now we're here at this lake. Should we make a canoe? Should we explore this lake? Should we go somewhere further? that whole notion of coaching is so fascinating to me. And with StrengthsFinder, you have to get coached, because to unlock the potential in just the top 5 alone, it's a fingerprint. You have to go through it. Nonetheless, going through all 34. Now, we're not going to get into that today. That's a different story. You're going to take it, and we'll talk about it. We'll definitely talk about it.
For sure.
I'm really excited for that. This is why strengths matters, because it helps unlock the potential that you were never aware of, or at least intentionally aware of. You said your empathy. I asked you, what would you say a top talent would be? And you said empathy. But then when I started to go dive into it, just how it is described here, like, wow, yes. And it's not for us to agree on it as much as for you to find the value. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story, Kevin. Like, you went really deep here. We got to share some very, very personal stories. And dude, you are a manifestation, a great shining example of millennial strength. So thank you so much, Kevin. And I look forward to having a follow-up with you on millennial strength sometime soon.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.